say hello to everybody. May the Lord, may His name be praised above all others. And particularly, let me say hello to everybody out there that's not physically present, but that's watching this conversation and this lesson online. Glad that you're here. So, and also I'll say I'm grateful for the opportunity to share tonight. I get really excited about the Bible. And that's when I'm at home all by myself. I get really excited. And the opportunity to discuss it with other people, oh, now that really is exciting. But it's exciting just to be able to read it at home and think about it. About how am I going to put that into practice? And what does that mean? And what did other people say about that? And what are the different ways you can look at it? And what's the right way to put this into practice and to understand what it's saying? So I'm honored to be given a chance to discuss it with you tonight. So I find the prophets really exciting. There's some very surprising things in the prophets. Some things that you wouldn't expect to see. Some things that run counter to the way that people think about the Bible that is in the prophets. Some things that the prophets say and do that you'd be like, that's in the Bible? Really? Kind of like the last time I talked, we talked about Jonah. Jonah. I mean, it's hard to even call that man a prophet. He was such a loser. He had a nasty attitude. Disappointing behavior. Really, you find virtually nothing he does that you can say much good about. But yet it's right there in the Bible. And we can learn some lessons from it. And we can put it into practice. So to me, that's exciting, but it's also peculiar. Tonight we're going to look at another prophet who also says and does some fairly peculiar things. So before we talk about it, I'd like to briefly mention what in the world do we mean when we say prophet? What is a prophet? Now I'll tell you what most people on the street will tell you a prophet is. A prophet is somebody that tells the future. Well, I don't agree with that. I do agree that prophets tell the future sometimes. But I don't think that's what makes someone a prophet. And prophets don't always tell the future. There's a name for people who always tell the future. Fortune tellers. That's not what a prophet is. A prophet doesn't just go around and say, oh, I see Sherry has cancer and now I'm making it go away. And B is going to tomorrow trip and fall, but she's going to be okay. And Deacon Doggett, his car is going to explode tomorrow. No, that's not what a prophet is. Prophets may do that. They may tell them something that's going to happen in the future. But that's because what a prophet is someone who speaks on behalf of God. That is what a prophet is. And prophets do lots of prophesying, that is, speaking for God, that doesn't involve anything to do with telling the future. Although sometimes it does. And tonight, we're going to look at a particular prophet. Now, before we look at this prophet, I'd like to discuss how to spell his name. Because he's got kind of an odd name. And let me just tell you, someone named Graydon, who named his daughter Josra, I know about unusual names. So they get my attention when you have an unusual name. And his name is spelled Habakuk. So it's H-A, ha, B-A-K, back, like your back, and then K-U-K, cook, Habakkuk. That's his name. And you'll find him, he's one of the 12 prophets. He is, let's see, he's I believe he's number 4 among the minor prophets. I think that's right. He's either just before or just after Jonah. So we're going to read and look at and talk about Habakkuk tonight. And I'm going to tell you before we look at it, it's going to get personal. It's going to get very personal. Because what Habakkuk says and what he does is very personal. And it's something that happens to you. And it's something that you have, something he had to deal with is something you have to deal with. So while you turn to Habakkuk, I will tell you that Habakkuk is a conversation between him and God. So Habakkuk says some things to God, and then God answers it. And then Habakkuk says some other stuff to God, and then God answers him again. The conversation is a little peculiar. And then at the very end, Habakkuk prays to God. And the prayer is very different from the rest of this conversation between him and God. Also in Habakkuk, there are some comments that the author makes. And by the way, it doesn't say whether Habakkuk is the one who wrote it down or whether somebody else wrote it down. We don't know. But there's some comments to the reader. So you're in Habakkuk. Because the author of Habakkuk makes some side comments to you. And starting in chapter 1, verse 1, it begins with a comment to you, B. He's talking to you. Eleanor, he's talking to you. He says, the prophecy that Habakkuk, the prophet, received. He tells you what he's about to talk about. Sherry, he's talking to you. Deacon Johnson, he's talking to you. He says, okay, Deacon Johnson, this is the prophecy that Habakkuk the prophet received. So you know what he's about to tell you. And then it jumps into the first set of questions that Habakkuk asked God. And he says, how long, Lord, must I call for help? But you don't listen. Or cry out to you, violence! But you don't save. Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? You ever talk to God like that? That's some harsh language. And he's talking to God. He says, how long do I have to call for help? But you don't listen. You're not listening to me, God. I've been calling out violence, and you haven't done anything. You're just standing there. You can see it, but you're not doing anything about it. What is up with that? That's unusual. It's an unusual way to start the message of the prophet. Him complaining that God is not righteous. And then he explains what exactly it is that's bothering him that makes him ask these questions. In verse 3, in the middle of the verse, he says, destruction and violence are before me. There's strife and conflict abounds. Therefore, the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that justice is perverted. How can we have the law and have righteousness when, God, you're letting the wicked people run over top of the righteous? They're wicked. Why are you letting this happen? It's not right. How can we're supposed to obey your law. How can we obey your law when everybody has us hemmed in and is stringing us up and treating us like dirt? And the wicked are in charge and the righteous are the ones suffering. Do something. Now, if you're going to claim you've never felt that way, I will call you a liar. But here's what you do when you feel like that. You say, well, I'm not going to say that to God. I'm just going to say hallelujah and move on. That's not honest. And guess what? Every thought you have in your heart, God sees and knows. He already knows what you're really thinking. So, you can't be slick with God and not say what you really think. Even if what you really think is wrong. Well, you still think it. So Habakkuk just goes ahead and says it. And you might say, well, I don't believe Christians should do that. Well, it's in the Bible. I didn't write it. I'm just reading it to you. So God gives an answer in verse 5 of chapter 1. God tells Habakkuk about what is about to happen. That is the answer to Habakkuk's complaint. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I'm going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told. I'm raising up the Babylonians, or you could call them the Chaldeans, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They're a law to themselves and promote their own honor. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swooping to devour. Anybody ever watch a hawk grab a chicken? Man, it's both pretty and hideous at the same time. Because they're so smooth at it. And he's saying that's what the Babylonians are like. They all come intent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like picking up sand. They mock kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at fortified cities. By building earthen ramps, they capture them. Then they sweep past like the wind and go on. Guilty people whose strength is their God. Now, you just complain to God that the wicked have hemmed in the righteous and have them dangling over a cliff. And God's answer is, well, you ain't seen nothing. I'm going to send some people that are going to ruin you. They're going to come in like eagles and swoop you up. They're going to scoop up people like they're made out of sand, like scooping up sand on the seashore. Would you find that comforting if you feel like God is not taking care of the righteous? And he says, well, you think that's bad. Wait, it's not nearly as bad as it's going to be when I send these other people. You find that comforting? You can dog in. I don't find it comforting at all. How do you think Habakkuk feels with this answer? Complains that the wicked have hemmed in the righteous. So God says, well, that is not half as bad as our season in just a few days. Wow. Well, so you might think, well, Habakkuk is going to take the message, and he's going to kind of back up a step and say, well, hold up, God, let's kind of, don't get all jiggy on me. But no, if you look at verse 12, Habakkuk sort of decides to butter God up a little bit. You ever do that when you're gonna get somebody? You say, you're just such a wonderful person. I'm so proud of you. You work so hard, and you seem to be really smart. So why are you such an idiot? You ever do that to anybody? Butter them up so you can knock them down? So this is what Habakkuk does with God. He says, Lord, are you not from everlasting? My God, my Holy One, He will never die. You, Lord, have appointed them to execute judgment. You, my rock, have ordained them to punish. Your eyes are too pure to look on evil. You cannot tolerate wrongdoing. Why then you tolerate the treacherous? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? Why do you do that, God? How is that a solution? How does that make you righteous? He is challenging the righteousness of God to God's face. He said, you're not righteous. And he goes on. He says, you've made people like fish in the sea, like the sea creatures that have no ruler. The wicked foe pulls all of them up with hooks. He catches them in his net. He gathers them in his drag net. And so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore, he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his drag net. For by his net he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest food. Is he to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy? Habakkuk says to God, how in the world is it right for you to treat people like fish and let them be fished like they're just something to catch on a hook and catch them in a net and dangle them and eat them? How in the world is that a righteous solution to my complaint, God? I don't get it. So, now this kind of reminds you of Jonah. He says in chapter 2, verse 1, he says, so, I'm going to go stand my watch and station myself at the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. Kind of like Jonah when he went outside the city and he sat up on the hill and he said, I'm just going to go. I don't like any of this mess going on. I'm going to go sit up there and I'm going to watch and see what happens. Because I don't think it's right. That's what Habakkuk does. I'm going to go. I don't like this. I'm just going to go sit and watch and see what you do. Then the Lord replied. This again is a message to us from the author. So then here's God's answer to that. So God gives Habakkuk some instructions. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. So I want you to, I got an answer. And I'm not ashamed of my answer, God says. In fact, I want you to write it down so that it can go get published and everybody can hear what I have to say. Because in case you think I'm ashamed of how I'm operating, I'm not ashamed at all. I want to make sure everybody knows about this conversation that I'm having with you. I want them to know what you said. I want them to know what I said back. Then I want them to hear your complaint. And then I want them to hear what I'm about to say now. I want everybody to know. No secrets. Not just a conversation between me and you. I want Sherry and I want Elder Henderson to hear about it 3,000 years from now. And I want them to ponder. And he says, for the revelation awaits an appointed time. Because he already gave a revelation. Babylonians are going to come. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. This is God speaking. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and not delay. When God says something, you can bank on it. You might not like it. You might think it's not fair. You might complain about it. You might say, well, any God who says that, I'm not going to believe in a God like that. You can do that. Okay? Go ahead. It's your life. And you know why I say that? Because people do it. I've done it. In fact, what you want to do? Knock yourself out. Enjoy your just desserts, too. God says, I told you what I'm going to do, and I am going to do, and you can make bank on that. And then God says, see, the enemy, he's puffed up. His desires are not upright. So he says, yeah, I know. I'm sending some wicked people. They're wicked. I know they're wicked. I know. I'm sending the wicked. He's going to punish you, Habakkuk. He's going to punish your people, Habakkuk. He's going to punish the righteous, Habakkuk. Yep, going to happen. And I'm not ashamed. Then he says, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. Let's chew on that a second. The righteous person will live by his faithfulness. The righteous person will live by his faithfulness. If you think God's not righteous, and you got a better way, go for it. Don't want you to do that? No. But if you're going to anyway. So I might as well just let you, because you could be not letting you and go change anything. But if you want to be righteous, and you don't want to follow God, don't ask me what I think about that, because I will tell you. You're not righteous, you're wicked. If you think that not following the Bible and trusting your heart to God's commands, I'm not talking about just mere rule keeping. I'm talking about that you love Him, and you want to serve Him, and you want to please Him, and you want to do what He wants you to do. And that when you go to bed at night, if you toss and turn at night because you're worried about something, the thing that you're worried about is, how can I do a better job of serving the Lord? That when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's because you've got a scripture on your mind that it's been eating at you. How can you put it into practice? Because you know you're not. That when opportunities to do evil arise, which they do all day, every day, it's coming for you. Let me just say, it's coming. It's been coming. And it's all around you, calling your name. And when they come, you say, I'm going to exercise self-control. Yeah, but it sure would be nice. Sure would be nice. Sure would be nice to do the right thing. That's what sure would be nice to do. Yeah, but that's going to be hard. You cannot, nobody's perfect. God knows your heart. Yeah, God knows your heart. He does know your heart. That's that's the issue. He knows your heart. And your heart is wicked. Don't you tell me that your heart is right, because it ain't. And so, you buckle down. And you exercise discipline, self-control, and do the right thing, because you know that there's a reward, an eternal reward. And I don't just mean eternal reward, you get to be with God in heaven when you die. Yes, that. But there's an eternal reward, meaning there are eternal consequences. What you do with your life affects everybody else's life, because you're setting an example for other people. People are watching you. And your life is a billboard to other people. And you want to be a billboard that points people to God. So you choose to do the right thing. Even when it's hard. Even when it's impossible. Even when you have no idea how you're going to do it. You struggle to find out what is right, and then you do it. But the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. And then God goes back to talking about the enemy some more. He says, indeed, wine betrays him. He's arrogant and never at rest, because he's greedy as the grave, and like death is never satisfied. He gathers to himself all the nations and takes captive all the people. But what's going to happen to him? Will not all of them taunt him with ridicule and scorn, saying, woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself rich by extortion? How long must this go on? Will not your creditors suddenly arise? When you rob Peter to pay Paul, and then you rob Paul to pay Peter, eventually Paul and Peter want to get paid. And they're coming for you. And you run around, you try to figure out, how can I run a hustle on everybody? You can't run a hustle on God. But even Pookie ain't going to let you run a hustle on him for so long. Because he's going to come back and say, your hustling's done, it's time to pay up, bro. In this life, right now. And you go, I ain't got it. He's like, well, you're going to pay right now, one way or another. So, if you ain't got it, I'm going to take it. And you say, well, I ain't got nothing to take. Say, well, yeah, you got something I'm going to take. So, well, I ain't got no money. Say, well, there's some other ways you can pay. That's how the game is played. So you might think that you're going to run a hustle on everybody and hustle your way around. No, you're not. Running a hustle is a life's occupation. The retirement in that job is real bad. Let's just put it like that. So the Babylonians, they've been running a hustle, and somebody's going to call them. Because you've plundered many nations. The people who are left will plunder you. Excuse me. For you have shed human blood. You have destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. Woe to him who builds his house by unjust gain, setting his nest on high, to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many people, shaming your own house and forfeiting your life. The stones cry out. And he goes on to say that this just isn't going to work. And he says in verse 14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. And starting in verse 15, he talks about people who get people drunk so they can see them naked. So he talks about substance abuse and sexual abuse. Because, those are two things that people love to run a hustle. They love the sex game. They love to get everybody high. Because the higher you get, the more sex you get. The more sex you get, the more hustles you can run. At least that's the way that people think. And he says, no. What's going to happen in verse 17 of chapter 2? The violence you've done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and your destruction of animals will terrify you. For you have shed human blood, you have destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. Then he has some things to say about people that practice idolatry. Of what value is an idol carved by a craftsman, or an image that teaches lies? For the one who makes it trusts in his own creation. He makes idols that can't speak. Woe to him that says to wood, come to life, or to useless stone, wake up! Can he give guidance? It's covered with gold and silver, but it ain't got no breath. You're worshiping a piece of wood, dude. And let me tell you, you might say, well, that's not really a problem in America. It is a problem in America. It's a major problem in America. It's a problem. Well, it's a problem as a metaphor. No, it's a problem with reality. People love to go. We talked. I can't remember who it was a few weeks ago. Talking about it was Deacon Ely talked about going to the roof worker, having potions put on people, going down to the palm reader down on Raleigh Road. Let me tell you. We talked about mindfulness meditation here, which is Buddhism, yoga, which is Hinduism. The Hindus are all over the place, and lots of Americans are all up into Hinduism, ancestor worship, talking to the dead. This is a major issue in America. You toy with it, it's going to burn you. And there are lots of people who are Christians who also dabble in magic, Christian magic. It's wrong. And then there's another comment to the reader in verse 20. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. Now, I used to go to churches that they would sing this song that had, y'all ever heard the song for this verse? The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silent before him. Keep silent, keep silent, keep silent before him. And that song is a song that people used to sing to get everybody to be quiet when church starts. You everybody calm down. That's not what this is about. It's not like, oh, let's go into a transcendental mood. That's not, this is supposed to terrify you. This is a threat. The Lord is in his holy temple. Y'all shut up. You better be quiet when you're in the presence of the Lord, because he doesn't play. Homie don't play, and he don't take no prisoners. He's going to get you. It's a threat. don't believe that, wait just a second. Let's see what Habakkuk has to say. And then the writer tells us, another comment to us in chapter 3, verse 1, a prayer of Habakkuk, the prophet, on Shigionoth. Lord, I've heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day, in our time, make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. See, Habakkuk has come to his senses. Unlike Jonah, Habakkuk is like, whoa, I don't know what I was saying. I kind of got ahead of myself. And he says, God came from Teman, the Holy One from Mount Paran. His glory covered the heavens, and his praise filled the earth. His splendor was like the sunrise. Rays, pew, 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 flashed from his hand. Where his power was hidden, pew! He's better than Spider-Man. Spider-Man shoots webs. He shoots out lightning. Plague went before him. Pestilence followed his steps. He stood and shook the earth. He looked and made the nations tremble. The ancient mountains crumbled, and the age-old hills collapsed. But he marches on forever. Don't mess with God. Don't mess with him. People say, well, you're not supposed to be afraid of God. You're just supposed to respect him. No, you're supposed to be afraid of him. If you're not afraid of God, you are a fool. When it says fear God, it means fear him. He spoke the universe into existence, and he can speak you out of existence. He can penalize you. He can punish you. And if you don't serve him, he will punish you. You better be afraid. If you're not afraid of God, and I mean afraid, you have no sense. Don't mess with the only party in this universe who can speak it into existence, because he does not play. He doesn't suffer fools. And the people who defy him will, in fact, be punished forever. People say, well, you shouldn't talk about hell. That just scares people. You better be scared. People say, oh, you bunch of Bible and hell raisers. No. If you don't serve the Lord, you, in fact, are going to go to hell. And not only am I not ashamed to tell you, I'm telling you because you need to hear it. You need to fear it. You need to think about it. Now, don't do it just because you don't want to go to hell. Of course not. That's not, you don't love your Father just because he might whip you if you don't. You love him because he's your Father. You love him. You're grateful. He cares about you. He took care of you. He feeds you. He worries about you. He punishes you because he loves you. You should be fond of him. But you better fear him too. Because when he comes home, if you have just played the fool, he's going to wear you out. So yeah, you fear God. Yes, if you don't serve him, you will go to hell. You will not go to heaven. And there is a hell, and you will be punished there. Well, I don't like that. Deal with it. Well, who do you think you are? Servant of God. Oh, well, you don't get to judge people. I'm not judging you. I'm notifying you that you're going to be judged. I have no power to judge you. And frankly, I don't even like the idea of it, because it applies to me too. But since it's true, you remember what he said, what God said earlier? He said, when I say something, I mean it. And if I say it, it's true. So then, wouldn't I be a fool for changing it to make it sound better when it's a lie? And wouldn't I be a fool not to tell you that you're going to suffer if you don't serve the Lord? I'd be the meanest person in the world not to tell you. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just telling you. No, I'm not, and I didn't make it up. I'm just telling you what God said. You need to think about it. And Habakkuk says, I saw the tents of Cushan in distress, the dwellings of Midian in anguish. Were you angry with the rivers, Lord? Was your wrath against the streams? Did you rage against the sea when you made your horse and your chariots, when you rode your horses and your chariots to victory? You uncovered your bow. You called for many arrows. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. Torrents of water swept by. Think of Jonah. The deep roared and lifted its waves on high. Sun and moon stood still in the heavens at the glint of your flying arrows, at the lightning of your flashing spear. In wrath, you strode through the earth, and in anger, you threshed the nations. You scared yet? If not, you ain't listening. And listen to what Habakkuk says in verse 16. He says, I heard, and my heart pounded. You ever get surprised by somebody who attacks you, physically attacks you? I've had it happen to me many times, actually. And when it happens, you know, in case you had never been in a fight, or yet, when it happens, there are many ways you can react, but the way that I react is I defend myself. And I've done it many times when I was a young man, unfortunately. And sometimes I provoked it, and sometimes I started it. I'm sorry to tell you the truth, that's the truth. And I'll tell you what happens. You spring into action. I mean, you go. It's like you realize, I can't go, let's see. Okay, let's see, I have 4 options. No, you just got to go. You got to get it on. There's no, because if you wait, you go get your tail whirled. And you do it so fast that you're on it. You're like, man, I didn't know I could make a decision that quick. And stuff goes on, it all happens. And then when it's all over, and usually it feels like it goes on for an hour, but it actually only lasts a few seconds. Okay. It feels like slow motion. And afterwards, you're like, whoa. You can feel your heart about to jump out of your chest. And your adrenaline is all, you're like beside yourself. That's how Habakkuk feels. I heard and my heart pounded, my lips quivered. Literally. Decay crept into my bones and my legs trembled. You ever get up to speak? When I was a young man, what happened? Get up to speak before people and your legs shake? Ever had that happen? You're like, whoa, I got to grab the podium because I'm about to come down off this thing. That didn't happen to me anymore because my mouth is, I got a big mouth. But this happened to Habakkuk. Then he says, yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come on the nation invading us. He realizes that maybe terrible things might happen. But that if he waits, God, in the end, is going to bring righteousness. Waiting is hard. Because I want it now. I don't want to suffer. I don't want trouble. I don't want poverty. I don't want disease. I don't want people not to do what I want them to do. I don't want people to be against me. I don't want to lose my job and to have my dog die and the fence break and the cows get out and my roof drips and my shoes wear out and ain't got no money to pay the mortgage and ain't got no money to pay the light bill and the lights get cut off and the car gets repossessed and can't get a job and my wife leaves me and I get, my teeth fall out and can't see straight and get a bald spot on top of my head, get restless leg syndrome, and I don't want all that. But I got it. Now what? Well, now, Habakkuk said, I learned I'm going to wait patiently. Because the righteous will live by their faithfulness. And faithfulness takes patience. Then he says, though the fig tree does not bud. Ain't no grapes on the vine, bro. Olive crop fails. Fields ain't producing nothing. Ain't got no sheep in the pen. Ain't no cattle in the stalls. Yet, I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God's Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread on the heights. You ever watch deer? I've done a lot of stuff outdoors. A lot. More, you think a lot, more than that. A lot more than you think. And I've been outside with the deer in the morning. A lot. And I watched them. They are amazing. You can have, there are places where there was bramble that I couldn't even, I'd been in, I couldn't even walk through. It was so covered with vines and thorns and bramble and trees and fig trees. Holly. I hate holly trees. I hate it. Because you go running in the woods and you walk up into you don't see it, you walk into a holly tree and you get right in the middle of the holly tree and you go, and they're all pricked. No matter what you do, you can't turn without getting pricked. So you got to kind of slowly pull the pricks off and back. Oh, and that's got one in the back, and you try to go down, and there's one down there and hits you in the eye. I hate it. The deer, I've watched them. They can just go and take off and run that place I can't even get through, and they can just run through it like you would run through an open field or run down a track. And they just... And he says, God is going to make him like a deer. And then we're told that this book is written for the director of music on my string instruments. So this is actually a song that people sang to worship God. Now, I told you this is going to get personal. First of all, when you pray to God, you got to be honest. If you're mad, tell him. If you think he's an idiot, tell him. Well, I can't talk to God like that. Well, you already thought it. He already knows. Talk to him about it. That's how you work stuff out with people. You say, you know what? I can't believe you did that. You did this to me, you did that to me, and that ain't right, and I don't know, you got to lay it out, Be like the chicken that stopped in the middle of the road to lay it on the line. You got to just put it on out there. And then you got to be quiet and let the other person talk. They go, well, actually, you're the one that did it. You lie all over town, and you so-and-so and so-and-so. I didn't do nothing to you. Somebody just asked me, do you, did you rob the liquor store? And I said, yeah. I didn't do it. I didn't rob the liquor store. You did it. And then they asked me, and I don't lie. I told them you did it. I didn't do anything to you. You're the one that robbed the liquor store, bro. And you go, he's right. I did rob that liquor store. You think, well, maybe he didn't do anything to me. Maybe it was me. And by the way, I found, particularly in marriage, 99 times out of 100, the madder I get, the more likely it is it was me. It did. I found that out over and over and over again. I get mad, sit down with Laura and say, look, you did so. She said, well, actually, what happened to so-and-so? And I'm like, that is what happened. But we're so self-deceptive, it's always the other guy. But in order to get to that point, you gotta lay it out there. And it's okay. And you go, well, I can't talk to God like that. Well, how about Abraham? God said, I'm going to destroy Sodom. And Abraham's like, well, look, okay, God, let's say there was 200 righteous people. Would you hold up and not destroy Sodom? And God said, well, yeah, I'd do it for 200. Abraham said, okay, well, what if it were just 50? Would you hold up on destroying Sodom over 50? God's like, okay, 50. And Abraham said, well, what if it was only 10? He negotiated with God. Worked out the deal with it. And by the way, this is not the only prayer to God in which people complain that God is mistreated. The Psalms are full of them. There's gobs and gobs of Psalms just like this. One famous one is Psalm 2. Where the author complains, God, where are you when I need you? People have encircled me. They've surrounded me. They're like dogs that they've surrounded me. And they're wolves. They're like wolves, and they've surrounded me. They're going to get me. But you've abandoned me. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And I know you know who quoted that and when he quoted it. Elohai, Elohai, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus says on the cross, he's quoting a complete psalm. He's suffering, and he out of honesty cries out that he feels abandoned by God. And you feel abandoned by God. Sometimes. He loves you. That's how you work it out with him. A year ago, a friend of mine, a friend of yours, had a baby. Sweet little baby. And one evening, it was a Tuesday evening, she went outside. Her older kids were in the house watching the baby. She ran outside of her house to talk with some friends, just, a few feet outside the front door. Somebody came running out and said, Bryson's not breathing. She went in, tried to give the baby mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. but it didn't work. Baby was only 4 months old. And let me tell you what happened next. They called 911. Ambulance came. Popo came. Popo said, "You killed that baby." So you got a grieving mother. She's accused of killing her own baby. Police took a bunch of stuff, called Child Protective Services. If they had an ounce, they were looking, if they had an ounce of evidence, they would have arrested her right then and there. They wanted to. I talked to her. I was there. They wanted to arrest that woman. And they were mad as a wet hen because they believe she killed that baby. So imagine that your 4-month-old baby dies and the police come and they accuse you of killing your baby. Imagine how they feel. And they had no sympathy. They didn't say, "I'm so sorry for your loss, ma'am." They didn't have an ounce of sympathy. And they took a bunch of her stuff. About a week later, so she had to sit for about a week with a dead baby, with the possibility of being arrested for murdering the baby standing over her head. The coroner said, "Baby died of SIDS." The woman didn't do anything to that baby. You think the police came back and said, "We're so sorry for your loss"? The stuff that they took from her house so that they could hang her with the evidence, you think they brought it back? You think they ever bothered to call her? You think they ever expressed an ounce of sympathy? No. They hung CPS around her neck for about 6 months. Treated her like a common criminal. This world is not a righteous place. Your wife left you? Lose your job? Ain't got no money? Can't make rent? Got a prison sentence behind you? Can't get a job because you got a felony on your record? There's no mercy in this world. Look at how our government operates. From the local, from Vance County, right on up to the tip top. Everybody's at everybody's throat. Everybody's out to climb on top of somebody else, knock them down, and use them to stomp on, to trample on them, to climb up to the top. And they'll climb on you too. Does it sting? Yep. And you know what can happen? Because sometimes some of these things, there's something that you did that's your fault. And then people, they get down on themselves and they say, "Well, I've lost my power to speak for God, so I just give up." Maybe you ran around on your spouse and they left you, divorced. Maybe you didn't treat them right and they left you. Maybe they just ran around on you and they left you. Maybe. So now you're wounded. You're like a wounded animal. I'm never going back to anything. You know, Hosea's wife ran around on him. prostituted on. He said, go back to her, take her back, let her prostitute, and keep her. Hosea said, what? Yeah, that's what you do. God could use your tragedy to do great things. If you let a tragedy knock you down, then you're not dealing with a tragedy. You should use the word that tragedy like a badge of honor, including tragedies that you caused. Repent and turn your repentance into a badge of honor, because repentance brings times of refreshing. Terrible things happen to you. Use them to show that the righteous will live by their faithfulness. The righteous will live by their faithfulness. Be honest with God. Tell him how you really feel. Then choose to be righteous. There's going to be some struggle between here and there, but we're going to do it. May the Lord be praised, and may his name be held on high. Hands in the